And I'm back. This is everything for the month of June 2024. I'm trying to get caught up as best I can. As I mentioned last video, the weather is usually really hot. I shouldn't say usually, it has been a hot summer. Today just happens to be a bunch of rain, so perfect day to sit inside, catch up on my reading, and try and film a video to get caught up. So, gonna jump right into things. Black Panther issue number 5. I always give every series like 6 issues. Got to get through that first arc, just see how it goes. Of all the new Ultimate comics, this one right now probably the bottom, but there's only 4 books. Not saying it's bad or terrible. I'm story's okay. It's this is now starting to pick up, I would say, but yeah, it's just number 4. Nothing too crazy. T'Challa is trying to discover what this rare metal or substance is, and it's the anti-vibranium, basically vibranium. And this were 2 meteors that crashed on Earth. This actually brings life. It can grow worlds, terraform, probably like terraform a planet. And Khonshu and Ra are after it. T'Challa and his band of trustees are trying to figure out what to do with it or how it works. And yeah, in the end though, Ra steals it. What's kind of interesting, we see the Moon Knight, like this guy's got the crest like Moon Knight, right? It's kind of interesting is like Khonshu can like influence people, take them over, and bend them to his will. So they end up serving their god, Khonshu. And this guy attacks, he sneaks in, and he steals the anti-vibranium. So yeah, 1 more issue. I guess I'm going to say in the first arc, right? 6 issues. And we'll see where it goes. I'm going to stick with it, right? This was never on the chopping block. I'm really invested in reading all the Ultimate comics. So unless it was like, I don't know, say Ultimates Volume 3, you know, Jeff Loeb level of terrible, then yeah, I would be dropping this book. But it's nowhere near that. It's good. It's just, you know, comparing it to the other Ultimate books, it's just the weakest of the bunch, which is not saying it's bad, as I mentioned. It's just no Ultimate Spider-Man. But moving on, Void Rivals. So yeah, our 2 heroes, they were being helped out by this transformer, and I don't know his name. He turns into a helicopter and a car. He turns into a car. Why do you think a helicopter? I don't know. But this transformer's been on this planet for a very long time, and he's been using the technology left over from his ship and stuff he's been finding in this part of the planet that's kind of a wasteland that no one goes to. And we find out this book, you know, Void Rivals really ties in. There's some really interesting Energon level stuff going on here. We realize these ports on their heads, the diamonds, they're Energon ports. So this woman, like, she's badly hurt, she's dying, she's bleeding out, and he basically infuses her with Energon. And while she's in this state, she's talking to kind of a god, I guess, I don't know, a person that she swore allegiance to, Zerta. We didn't know too much, but when she comes out of it, she's glowing from all the Energon. And then we learn that Zerta is a transformer, Zerta Trion, and their planet has a lot of Energon. So yeah, some interesting stuff going on there. And then of course a whole army shows up at the end. So yeah, I'm still really digging this. It's great. I'll stick with it. It's got a lot of cool stuff going on. It's starting to kind of, I never knew if it was going to fully be like how closely was it going to tie into like some of the, they call it the Energon verse, even though G.I. Joes are part of it now too. But I haven't read any of the G.I. Joe stuff, just reading this and Transformers. And there's now starting to get a lot of, not direct crossover, but the lore is all kind of syncing up, which is nice. It's kind of cool. Moving on, Sacrificers number 9. Man, this book is just like, it's not so much a slow burn. It's not a fast ride. It's just, it's really good. So Pigeon is gone. He's in the home of one of these gods who kind of feels bad at what's actually happening. He feels some remorse, but then Pigeon is just murdering everyone. He's out to get revenge. And there's this like inner monologue of like what drives a person, and you know, Pigeon's fighting, and he's infused by basically the soul. You find out that these gods have been stealing the souls of children to keep them young. So he has the soul of a god who is the child of both the sun and the moon. And just as he's like being drowned, he kind of taps into this power to know. His axe starts glowing, and he just, yeah, murders a god. And he does feel remorseful that innocents have died, but he's just, you know, he's on this path now. Like there's no going back, right? He's gonna cut it all down and see where it goes. But man, this book is good. Honestly, Max Fiamara, I've been a big fan of his since I think the first thing I read by him when he was doing some of the Abe Sapien solo books near the end of BPRD's run. But yeah, art is just so good in this as well. Yeah, this is great. This is like one of my favorite books right now in the month. And it's coming out consistently, which is good. And yeah, can't go wrong. Rick Remender. Ultimate Spider-Man number 6. So we're now June, like 6 months into Spider-Man. Peter being dressing up as a hero, Spider-Man. He wakes up for breakfast. He comes down and he's got a huge black eye. Family asks what he does, and his daughter almost reveals he's a superhero, but he's like, nope, it's time to tell him. And he tells them all everything. He tells them everything. Why he got beat up, which is basically the previous night, him and the Green Goblin went to go confront the Kingpin. The Kingpin's like, I watch everything in the city. I knew you guys were coming a mile away. And Peter's starting, there's a couple of lines here of, you know, the Green Goblin mentioning that he was messing around with Bullseye, potentially killed him. And Peter's like, what? Like Peter's starting to realize he's not that he's in over his head, but there's things he's not being told. Kind of cool. The Kingpin's been like augmented in a way. So he's very strong. He's beating the crap out of them. And they kind of barely escape. I wouldn't say barely escape, but they get out and they get away. And yeah, Kingpin's still trucking along. Everyone's kind of good with it. They're more, you know, his son and Mary Jane are a little upset, you know, like anything. Why would you keep it a secret to us? And his son has a lot more questions, but he's like, we'll have to answer those later. You got to get to school. And something I didn't realize, Mary Jane's pretty good with it. It's cool. But again, something I didn't realize is that no one's actually called him Spider-Man. He doesn't have a name. So he asked her, like, he needs a code name, right? Like, what's it supposed to be? And there's this great panel like, oh, Peter isn't obvious, and, you know, touching his chest says, you're the Spider-Man. God, love this book. Seriously. This is so good. And yeah, it's building towards something pretty good. I wouldn't say this is like the first arc even, but it's just great. Like, honestly, this is, of all the Ultimate books, this is my favorite one. I'm going to have to say it's this one, followed so closely by Ultimate X-Men. And then Ultimates, which I got in here as well. But yeah, it just continues to be good. Like, this is the Spider-Man I've been wanting for such a long time. I don't read the main Spider-Man books because they just don't appeal to me. And there's so many of them, and there's so many characters now in the Spider family. Nothing calls out to me. So, Usagi Yojimbo, issue 277, part 3 of The Crow. There's been a lot of, I wouldn't say shorter stories, but this has been a really good arc with The Crow. A lot of cool stuff going on. Usagi's, obviously his cousin is trapped. We get a long kind of opening of these merchants and hired guys trying to get to this town before they're jumped and trapped by the Crow. So, you know, a larger gang is forming. They're going to go take out the Crow to get the bounty. And then, yeah, it kind of ends with Usagi catching up, getting run out of town because they don't want Usagi and his friends going after the Crow and stealing the bounty. But this little boy who's been around, this little street urchin, so to speak, it's like he knows where they are, but they'll have to pay. So, yeah, really fun story. Can't go wrong with Usagi Yojimbo. Always will recommend that book. Gods issue number 8. This is the last issue. Feels a little oversized. No, it's a little bigger than a normal issue. I didn't count the pages, but I'm really bummed that this series is ending. It kind of has on the last page that, like, they may come back, you know, that, you know, the characters are being created. They're in the Marvel universe, but yeah, great. Again, each issue has been kind of like a one and done story that kind of ties into a larger thing. There definitely was a bigger arc that just is never going to get picked up. So I think they just kind of knew what was happening. And I don't know. I'm going to say, like, it's not like they're trying to wrap things up, but this issue starts off 100 years in the future. There's old man Doctor Strange. There's our hero Quinn. There's this girl, what's her name? They have character guides in here somewhere. I'm flipping through this to find her name. Mia, who was the apprentice of the science crew. But yeah, in the future, there's a bunch of, Quinn's missing like a large chunk of his memory, and no one will tell him why. And then he basically uses time travel. He uses a spell to travel back. He's trying to go back in time, but part of that spell is it'll deposit him in different points in his life. So you kind of have all these different flashes. We see where he first started out, where he made his pact with the magic, where he finds out what happened to him in the time that he doesn't remember, which is kind of crazy, gruesome stuff. He meets a future version of himself where the world's kind of ended. And he's doing all of this to go back. It's talking about, can you change the past? He goes back to the day he was married. And does he change his future? But that's what it ends. You don't know. It's like, what's it going to be? What do you choose? And then it just ends. Kind of looks at the camera. And that's it. Dang. Such a great book. Great characters. Like, it's a real shame. I don't know. It's really disappointing when Marvel puts out books like this and they don't fit into whether they, have some sort of MCU mandate to synergize things, or they just don't sell it because it's a bunch of characters nobody knows. Doctor Strange has shown up quite a bit, but yeah, I'm gonna miss this book. It was a good one. Kind of bummed it's done. The Whisper Queen. So this is a Black Satin Tale. This is issue 2. Our heroes are trying to find their children. They actually do have to find their children, and then the last Black Satin book I got, which I think was called White Tree. In the end of this issue, they meet up, actually a bunch of those characters who are also kind of on the run from this corrupt government, and they all kind of met up and band together. And this Whisper Queen, who's this like deadly assassin, who her weapon is the souls of the people she's killed. It's kind of a cool idea. But yeah, they're gonna have to make their last stand, it looks like. So I suspect there's only maybe 1 or 2 more issues and then it's done. But I've been really digging it. It's just a nice little fun fantasy story. So good stuff. Transformers number 9. This book just keeps barreling along, and recently I learned that Daniel Warren Johnson is leaving the book altogether with issue 24 or something. So, good 2 years on the book, which is pretty good. So Optimus and his small band are heading out to find Soundwave, who's contacted Shockwave. And Shockwave actually has the technology to build a gate between the two worlds. So he does that. And they come in, a huge fight breaks out. Ratchet takes one in the chest. He might be down for good. Prime's going on. Yeah, a bunch of crazy stuff is happening. This is building up again to another like big push. It's like every time the Autobots get a little bit ahead, they get beaten down. The only hope, there's Jazz and RC are on their way to the dam to get their machine up and running that will build a harvest energon from the dam, and then be able to start healing more Autobots. So maybe that's what's going to happen, and I don't know. It's like lots of bad stuff. Optimus is getting his butt handed to him. This, I thought there's this stuff happening on Cybertron, which I thought was a flashback with Ultra Magus and who I thought was RC, unless yeah, I don't know. Unless there's 2 RCs, I really don't know. But then she goes through the gate with the remains of Ultra Magus and stumbles into the fight between Shockwave and Optimus, destroys the gate, shoots it, and then they all escape, even though they don't get Ratchet and Cliffjumper. They're captured and told that they're going to be experimented on painfully. And then, yeah, Spike is kidnapped they try to take him back to there, but then he's saved by Beachcomber, which is kind of cool. So another bot, which I've not seen yet. So yeah, really fun. It's kind of a bummer that Daniel Johnson is going to be done the book. I'll keep up with it until then, but he's the main reason I was reading it. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Ultimates number 1. So this is picking up where Hickman left off. Hickman's not reading at this writer Camp. I don't know his name, full name. Maybe it's in the beginning here somewhere. Denise Camp, who's written, I've read his name a lot, their name a lot, I should say. And but yeah, kind of picks up right where Hickman left off with the story of Iron Lad and Doom. I've been calling him Doom, it's Reed. And it's funny because there's a line where he's like, I've been trying to call him Reed, but he just wants me to call him Doom. Captain America's frozen. It's just kind of talking about what their plan is. So they have, there's the end of where their story left off. He used the Omega, his machine in his suit. It's basically a time machine to send them 6 months into the future. So this is where they devise the plan. This is the crazy part, right? All these other Ultimate books like Spider-Man have been like inching forward month by month. And this is 6 months ahead of them. And he comes with the plan of Ultimates 1.0, where he's going to use the time machine to create all the tech and all the things they've stolen to send tools and, you know, basically what Peter got, a package to heroes telling them that they were heroes and if they want to accept this, so they can build an army. So that basically they send us back in time, and then tomorrow, boom, they have the resistance. Steve Rogers is up. He's like, I don't really believe this is going to work, blah, blah, blah. We learned that a lot of people, it didn't work. A lot of people actually died by accidentally using their powers. We see Spider-Man, we see Captain Marvel, who we have not seen, Hawkeye dumping his, you know, all his gear in the bin. And then, okay, you know, like, okay, Steve's right. You know, we've ruined lives here. We gotta rethink this, and we're gonna go 2.0, and we're going back out there. So then we cut to Hank and Janet, I guess Pym, they're married. Externals, they find moloids. We found that moloids are a thing, and people can just freely kill them in this world, which is kind of messed up. Iron Man confronts them. Iron Lad, confronts him. He's like, you should join us. And then we see that Hank Pym's had the gift from Stark this whole time. And then they're all jumped by Captain Britain. Just looking for revenge. Fight breaks out. Janet, Hank suit up, join. There's a great little kind of moment here where Hank has seen what he's meant to be. And he sees that while Janet becomes this great hero, he's Hank Pym. He's a kind of a bastard, right? He creates Ultron. He becomes a villain. Like, it just doesn't work out. And Steve's just like, you're not that person, though. Like, the world has changed, and you have to make that choice. He turns into a giant man, and he stomps everybody, which is pretty cool. And, yeah, the Ultimates are there, and they're going to leave their mark. So, really good first issue, honestly. Looking forward to where this series goes and what are the heroes they pick up. I know I've seen some of the previews. They're like, She-Hulk is definitely coming. I wouldn't be surprised then if Carol joins, if Carol Danvers is still Captain Marvel, but we'll see. Fun stuff. I Hate Fairyland 15. So last issue, apocalypse happened. These Gertlins, these creatures that destroyed everything, comes with a plan where they take this Gert and they turn her into a giant Godzilla. And she defeats her. She saves the planet. She's the hero for once. And it kind of ends where they're like, well, that's great, but how do I turn back? Like, we didn't really think of that part yet. To be continued. But something real big and huge and epic is coming next issue. So seriously, it's going to be awesome, they say. I honestly, as I say every month, I Hate Fairyland. This book could just keep going and going. But yeah, it always gives me a shock when I read it. Can't wait to see what they do next month, really. Then the final single issue I got, Ultimate X-Men 4. Man, this book just gets better and better. It really is starting to remind me of like a shoujo manga. You know, shonen is like for boys, shoujo seeing that young girls, teenage girls, but the cast is kind of growing, which is good, and their powers are starting to get a bit, I wouldn't say stronger. Like, it's just not a typical X-Men story, like, you know, the school and all that stuff, but yeah, we get a peek at who one of the villains is, or another villain, the Shadow Man, who I thought was the guy in a closet, but this is a different guy, or maybe he's being manipulated. I don't know, but a bunch of people see Misoka using her powers, and Surge, her friend, shows up and blasts everything, blasts her phones, but video footage still gets out in the end, and they don't know who, but yeah, just more people. There's this girl who takes one of the electrical charges from the previous fight and eats it. I don't know. It says things are about to get a lot more fun. Cool. More mutants. Yeah, it's great. Honestly, like, this is, I know people are really digging this book, which is awesome. I kind of think of myself of like, I remember honestly like 20 odd years ago when Marvel had like the manga verse, and it was just not shunned. People bought it. It was popular. There's a lot of great artists, but people thought it was like very lame because it was like trying to make manga out of comics. And this is just like the better version of that, which is fine. I read the manga verse when it came out 20 years ago, but this is so good. I'm digging this. It's got a bit of all the stuff I love from manga, plus the X-Men. Peach Momoko is just absolutely killing it. So yeah, can't wait to just have this keep going. This also shows, I think they do the monthly thing too. No, they don't. So I don't know how this is tying in, because the other books, let me flip forward to Black Panther here real quick, because I was mentioning how Spider-Man has the monthly thing. It's like every issue is another month. This is just an ongoing story. So yeah, curious to see how all these books kind of tie together with the Ultimates, with it picking up. So we'll kind of see. Because we do see in the Ultimates, there is a reference directly to Spider-Man, but there's no reference to Black Panther yet, or the mutants in Japan. Cool, that's all the monthlies. Pretty good stack. Yeah, a lot of fun to read. Nothing on there that I feel like is like close to me on the chopping block, which is pretty good. It's had a really solid run this summer. Moving on to the monthly stuff. I got Coda. This is, I don't know if you'd call it Fallen 2, but this is False Dawn. So first Coda is like a good 12-issue run. It's like in a world where like magic, there's a, the final battle of magic took place in this fantasy world, and the bad guys won, and there's no more magic. Everything's just gone to heck. And there's this bard, his name's Hum, his wife, who's like an orc. And yeah, they had a great adventure of just, helping people and living in this world. And they kind of went to retire. So this is just a follow-up story to that, which is pretty fun. So looking forward to reading this. I had a lot of fun reading the first one. I'm digging Simon Spurrier. I don't read really any of the stuff he does that's at the big two, but all the stuff I read from him that's from like Image, or this is from Boom published this one. Great. And then Matthias Bergara, like this guy's art is phenomenal. I think I first saw his stuff in Step by Bloody Step, which is also written by Cy Spurrier, but there's no dialogue in that entire series, and it's great. Highly recommend it. So very excited to read this one. As I mentioned last month, I got the final Avengers Complete Collection from Jonathan Hickman. Moving on to Fantastic Four Complete Collection from Jonathan Hickman. So this is collecting everything from Fantastic Four, probably some of the stuff from the Dark Reign. I don't know what the Future Foundation stuff's in here just yet, but it'll probably pick up in the next volume. But yeah, so excited. Like, after I have this, I'll have a very good run of Jonathan Hickman that is all his Fantastic Four stuff, which lays a bit of groundwork for the Secret Wars, the Avengers run, which directly ties into Secret Wars, and then I got Secret Wars on the shelf as well. Yeah, what can I say? This is honestly just one of my all-time favorite Fantastic Four runs. Fun story. Before I was really into Jonathan Hickman, when this came out, this is like shortly after, maybe about a year. I think this came out like close to just over a year after Civil War. So I was reading Fantastic Four during that, because J. Michael Straczynski was a writer, and I was really into him at the time. And then Mark Millar and Brian Hitch came on and did a big run, big epic run. It was okay. It was pretty good. It was a fun story. But at the end of that run, I was like, I'm just kind of done. I was like, who's next? And it was Jonathan Hickman. And I kind of read some of his stuff from Image, but I wasn't like the biggest. I didn't say I disliked Hickman. I just didn't realize how much I was going to enjoy his stuff later on. So I stopped reading the Fantastic Four. I was like, I'm done. I am reading so many books. I got to make a cut somewhere. This is a clean break with the new writer coming on. I'm going to walk away. And then like 15 years later, I go back and read this. I'm like kicking myself in the butt, because I'm like, dang, this was so good. Like, better than J. Michael Straczynski's run, better than Mark Millar's run. Yeah, start to finish, just fantastic. So very excited to have this one as well. Moving on, I got a Barda, Big Barda, from the New Gods. It's an all ages book from Guzi Ukazu. Right? I think that's pretty right. All ages book. I read a good review of this art, creator's other stuff, and then I was like, oh, they did this Bardo all ages book. I was like, yeah, I'll check it out. I like a good all ages book. I'm a sucker for anything that's kind of New Gods. So yeah, looks really fun. Kind of curious. It's like New Gods is a pretty, I wouldn't say it's complex, but it's like an old story, and it's Jack Kirby, so you don't get a lot of young comic readers or new comic readers getting into it. But if you get people into the New Gods by getting them the Big Barda, then really you're on your way there. The last book I got, volume 2 or book 2 of this Moonray series by Brandon Graham and Zura Penalta. Um, Brandon Graham's been just writing like some really crazy science fiction stuff the last, I feel like, 10 years. Rains Like Hammers was the last one. Well, the volume 1 of this was the last one I read, but Rain Like Hammers was really good. I really like the first volume of this. So yeah, I'm going to pick up the second volume. And Brandon Graham does do all the arts, but then there's sections, there's kind of near the end where the other artist kind of takes over for a chapter for characters. It's really good. It's like really good sci-fi. I say really good sci-fi where it's like, it's not so much, it's like alien worlds and lots of world building and just like crazy stuff that only you would expect to happen in crazy sci-fi, right? Like just the character designs, the creatures, the planets, just a lot of work has gone into it. And Brandon Graham draws it in just really cool, interesting ways. But the stories are still very human, right? Very, very human things. So yeah, like Rain Like Hammers was really good. And this has been great so far too. So that's everything for the month of June 2024. Great stack, lots to catch up on. I immediately got to start reading July's books now that I finish this stack and then get that video out. The stack for July is honestly everything, monthlies and like graphic novels and trades and books is the biggest I've gotten all year. I kind of had a suspicion that was coming just because I'd ordered some books I knew were coming out this year and I hadn't seen them. So usually that middle of the year is like where everything kind of gets dumped on me. So not in a bad way, more just like a much larger box than normal showed up. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this should be fun. And it was, it's great. So looking forward to getting those too. Again, lots of good reads this month. Nothing on the chopping block yet, but we'll see what happens. As always, let me know what you think. Send me your jeers, send me your cheers, and I'll see you next month.